Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks so much for being here. You know, these diversity seminars, diversity, inclusion, and equity seminars. If you haven't had one yet, you will. They're everywhere. They're in every grade in school and every business. Coca-Cola had theirs the other day, and there was a big screen, and it said, try to be less white. We got a list here of some companies that have fully embraced wokeness and woke seminars and all the rest. I want you to be properly prepared, armed and ready when you have your "you are a racist" training at your work. Or if your kids come back from school and say, Mommy, Daddy, I was told I was a racist. I want you to be ready to respond to that and rebuke it. You are being told a lie, and I want you to know the true story. The modern day race baiters are very shrewd, very clever, and they have taken down many an unsuspecting person before, but not you. I want to share insight here from San Diego County. I live in San Diego. San Diego County had their diversity, inclusion, equity seminar just the other day. It wasn't the whole county, which, by the way, is bigger than half the states in the country, population and landmass-wise, which is an interesting San Diego County fact. But it wasn't the whole county who had this seminar, just the Health and Human Services Agency, a 6-hour seminar. Again, Health and Human Services, I'd think they would be, busy. At the health and the vaccine distribution people had to take a day off to learn about how they're all racist. So we got the presentation, and it's classic, right? It's all the basic normal stuff that we've talked about many times before. The basic premise is all white people are racist by their existence. Just you're born racist. That is your original sin in this woke cult religion. We've played this video before. I thought this was some kid. I thought this was some high school kid. Apparently he's like a Broadway actor or something. He's like a popular guy or whatever. But here he is doing a wonderful job articulating this woke doctrine.
Exactly. I am the oppressor. I am racist. Oh my God, he just said he's racist. It shouldn't be this hard, you guys. If you live in America, went to school, participate in the socioeconomic structures, participate in any sort of system, education, business, entertainment, what have you, and you are white, you are indoctrinated, you are oppressive, and yes, you are racist. It is something that we have learned, either consciously or subconsciously, all of us as white Americans. And what we have to do is unlearn that. I'm trying to do the work. Part of doing the work is pushing against dangerous narratives that are counterintuitive to that unlearning, like white people are also oppressed by racism. We're not. We are the oppressors. That's the point. You should be doing the unlearning too. Do the work.
That guy, am I right? So your kids are taught that, so you know. Your mere participation in systems that exist, like, I don't know, capitalism and America. You existing here is proof of your racism because these systems were created by white males to support white people and oppress people of color. That's the story. And they're going to jam it down your throat unless you push back. But you can't push back, because if you push back, then you're a racist and you could get fired. So you're in a real sticky wicket here. You're told you're racist, and if you say nothing, your silence is violence. If you say nothing, you're complicit. If you say, I'm not racist, whoa, why are you being so defensive? That's proof that you are indeed racist. If you respond with facts, well, you are perpetuating white supremacy culture of objectivity. I believe we have that even here on one of the slides from the San Diego County. It's characteristics of white supremacy culture. On the bottom right, objectivity. So if you state facts, oh, here's how I'm not racist, well, that's you believe that there's such thing as objective truth. Therefore, you are racist. The only way out of being racist is to join their cult. And when you join their cult, you have to call everyone else and everything else racist as well. Another thing they say, and this is all basic stuff, like this is universal. Every day there's more of these. Chris Rufo is wonderful. You got to follow Chris Rufo. Every day he's coming out with a new school or a new company or whatever that has these things being leaked out to everyone, these training slides and presentations. And they have universal themes across all of them, and this is one of them. One of them also is you're either racist or anti-racist. You're either racist or you're anti-racist, there's no in between. So you're either doing the work, people, and unlearning. And if you're not doing that, then you are racist. Now, a little side point on that. Guys, I think we have another slide here. This is, oh no, so we have the white privilege side. Sorry guys, I got these screwed up. Go to the white privilege one, if you may. So this is if you're called racist and you deny it. You can see the third one down, well, defensive and aggressive reactions. And then the third one down, counterproductive behaviors include argumentation and silence. So if you say nothing, you're racist. If you argue, then you're racist. If you're emotional, then you're racist. Robin DiAngelo literally has a chapter in her book called White Women's Tears. And if you get emotional and you're a woman and you cry after being accused of being a racist, then you're taking the spotlight away from black voices and black bodies, which is just as bad as white men who raped black women back, hundreds of years, right? Where was I going? Another one. White supremacy. So the other slide, sorry guys, the first one you put up. Characteristics of white supremacy culture. On the upper right, you see one of the characteristics of white supremacy culture is either or thinking. Either or thinking. Yet, it's these anti-racist people, the ones who are saying you are either racist or anti-racist. Either or. How white supremacist of you. We've talked about all those things before, and you've seen all those before. But there's a new one here. There's a new thing in this presentation from these woke diversity, inclusion, equity seminars that I've never heard before and I want to share. It is the what you say versus what I hear. What you say versus what I hear. Dear white people, when you say, and then it has 5 different things, I hear, and then it has 5 different wild misinterpretations. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to read the last one. Dear white people, when you say, if there were riots here, I'd get my gun, I hear you fantasize about killing black people. So if you, white person, if you say, wow, if there were riots, near my house, I would get my gun, what a black person hears is you fantasize about killing black people. I don't know how to express this calmly or academically. Let me try with this. In any conversation, there are understandable misinterpretations of things that someone says. Right? So if I say a sentence, these words come out of my mouth, and then they enter your brain, and they're going to be reinterpreted and misinterpreted and put through this Rube Goldberg matrix in your brain that make you interpret it in a completely different way. And there's an acceptable range of that, right? So if I say the sentence, it is a beautiful day today. The proper interpretation of that sentence is, Slater thinks it's a beautiful day today. That's the proper interpretation. But there's some other possible interpretations that one could possibly make from that sentence, right? For instance, Slater doesn't think it was a beautiful day yesterday. So if I say it's a beautiful day today, does Slater mean it wasn't a beautiful day yesterday? Okay, there's some question there. That's within a range of proper, I don't know. So now, how do you respond to that? Well, you ask. You ask me. Say, Slater, do you think yesterday was beautiful too? And I would say, oh yes, yesterday was beautiful as well. Great. I made a statement. You had a question about it. What did he really mean? You asked me. I cleared it up. Wonderful communication. Well done, human beings. Now, if I say, wow, it is a beautiful day today. And you say, oh, so you want to kill black people, huh? Classic white person. That's psychotic. I can't deal with that. There's no give or take in this scenario. If I say, wow, if a riot comes near my home, I'm going to get my gun to protect my family, is the rest of that sentence, from dying, if you hear, oh, so you can't wait to kill black people? You fantasize about killing black people? You fantasize about killing me? If you hear that, you are the one with the problem. That is so far beyond how a normal, healthy, emotionally stable person could possibly interpret what one would say about protecting their family from a mob in a riot. I can't be responsible for that. There's a line of what the original speaker is responsible for. And I get this all the time. I speak for a living. So I'll say something, and I talk for an hour here and 3 hours on the radio. So I'll say something, and I'll get an email, and it starts off with, "Hey, Slater, I can't believe you said," and they go on. 99% of the time, I didn't say that. I just didn't say it. Sometimes they're like, they're thinking of a different show, and I didn't say it at all. Or sometimes they're like totally misinterpret it, and whatever. But a lot of the time I can see how someone could jump from what I said to what they heard. I get it, right? And part of that is I can't include every single asterisk to every single statement I make every single time. Right. And that's fine. So there's normal understanding. I write them back and we clear it all up. But every once in a while, I'll get an email, or I'll say something like, in San Diego, we have this bizarre dog culture where people just bring their dogs everywhere, like restaurants all the time. So I'll say on the radio, I'll say, "Hey, people, maybe you should leave your dogs at home instead of letting them sit at on the table, literally on the table at restaurants." And I'll get an email. It's like, "Oh, Slater, I can't believe that you want to kill all the dogs in the world. That's so appalling. I'm gonna call the SP. I don't know. I'm gonna call the SPCA or whatever." It's like, whoa, listen, lady. If that's what you heard me say, I can't be responsible for that. That one's on you. So imagine like a scale, right? I say a statement and there's like a normal interpretation one way or the other, a couple notches on either side that's reasonable. But anything outside that responsible range, you need to recalibrate your brain and get to the root of why you would possibly interpret it that way. And I'll get to the root of it right now. Stop making everything about you. And that's what I want to get to next. Because that's really the root of all this insanity. All of this. I'll talk about that now. Self-centeredness. But the conclusion of this segment is don't join their cult. That's the only way they let you out of it. That's the only way they want you to think that you can get out of it, is to just give up and join the cult. Do not buy their lies. They are telling you one story, that you are a racist, but in reality, they are racist. That is the true story. I'm so grateful you're here watching. However you're watching us, Pluto, Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, whatever platform. I want to encourage you to download our app as well. Super easy, super clean. You got the whole gang right here, as you can see. It's such an easy app to use. You can play it in the background. You can watch us on the go and listen on the go as well. And it's totally free in the App Store. Just search for it, The First, on your smartphone, and it's there, and it's free. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So here's the true story with this. Everyone wants to make themselves the center of their world. Everyone is the center of their world. And that's the root of all of this woke stuff. In the end, if you keep digging deep enough, that's what it is. Let me explain. It's pride. It's all pride. And that's not too insightful, right? I'm not giving myself a ton of credit here. Almost everything comes from pride. Right? 2 Corinthians 5:15 says, "And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves." Should no longer live for themselves. Those who live should no longer live for themselves. Meaning, you currently live for yourself. That's what we do. We have always lived for ourselves. And if God is not at the rightful place, at the center of your existence, if God is not at the center, then you are at the center of it. And that is selfishness. It's literally self-centeredness. Interesting, that's a term that we all know, obviously, self-centeredness. But I haven't heard it in a long time. Have you heard that word in a long time? Self-centeredness? Oh, you're being self-centered. We all are. And if you're at the center of your existence, then life is all about what I want, my wants, my desires, my concerns, my feelings, my comfort, my pleasure, my success. It's all about me, 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 what I want, what I want. And then if I get it, I'm happy for a split second. And if I don't get it, then I'm not happy, and I'm gonna make everyone else miserable with me. When you're at the center, when God's not, but you are, you're not serving others. You expect everyone else to serve you, right? Because why wouldn't everyone? I'm the center of my universe, so I should be the center of everyone else's universe too. But you're not. I'll get to that point in a second. But we all work nonstop, all day, to try and build our own little pathetic kingdom. And people who are working to make their little kingdom, they know how pathetic their kingdom is. Like, you deep down, you know it. So what we do is we go out and we try to attack everyone else's kingdoms, and then it's just tribal warfare madness. Stop it. Stop building your kingdom. Stop putting you at the center of the universe and stop building your kingdom. And we'd be a much better people and a much better world. C.S. Lewis wrote a ton about this. A couple famous lines of his I want to share. Maybe the most famous on this point is from the Screwtape Letters, which is an amazing book. You have to read it. The demon Screwtape, he said, "We must picture hell as a state where everyone is perpetually concerned about his own dignity and advancement, like worldly success, where everyone has a grievance." Does that resonate today? "And where everyone lives with the deadly serious passions of envy, self-importance, and resentment." Isn't that exactly, like that is, he wrote that in 1942 or something like that. Like that's exactly what's going on today. Right, that's what we talked about in the last segment there. San Diego County Health and Human Services, if a white person says, if riots come to my home, I'd go get my gun. And black people hear, oh, so you fantasize about killing people like me? Like, holy cow. But do you see the self-centeredness of that? That's hell. That's what C.S. Lewis called hell. Everyone has a grievance. And everyone, the people putting these seminars together and the woke people leading all this, they are sick with the deadly serious passions of envy, resentment, and self-centeredness. C.S. Lewis, one of his most famous lines, he said this: "Our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink, sex, and ambition, when infinite joy is offered us. But like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what's meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea, we are far too easily pleased, So we just go on, we just want these foolish, fleeting pleasures. Why? Because we are at the center of our existence, and we want to be comfortable. We want to be pleasured. So we just search after pleasure. He put it drink, sex, and ambition, because we're building our own little pathetic kingdom versus what God would really and could and does really have in store for you if you humble yourself, put him at the center of your existence, and then you will be exalted. That's my favorite line of the Bible. Humble yourself and you will be exalted. It's hard to do. Maybe one of the hardest things to do, to humble yourself. Get yourself out of the center of your story. Last Sunday, a couple days ago, I had the honor to deliver the sermon at my church. You can check it out on our website, mikeslater.locals.com. I put the whole sermon up there. It was short, it was 25 minutes. mikeslater.locals.com. And it was all about unity and rejecting worldly philosophies. So you can check it out, mikeslater.locals.com. But one of the scriptures I used was James 4:7. Submit yourselves then to God. Submit yourself. Submit in the Greek there meant to line up under. Submit, line up under. No one wants to do that. No one wants to line up under anyone or anything. How about you line up under me? That's what we tell God nonstop all the time. How about God, you go ahead, you line up under me. Do what I want. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled. We'll never learn. So I would argue that all this woke stuff, it's a frantic, desperate effort for most. Frantic. Frantic's a good word for this. It's frantic. People are frantic to fill a massive void in their life. Because they're at the center of it in their life and it's not working out. Of course it's not. So you got to find something. And you got to tear people down in the process. If you don't understand your brokenness, that's the first thing. And then if you don't understand how much God can rescue you, and if you don't understand his love for you, and here's the key that most people forget about. God loves you. That's the first thing. But also how much you don't deserve it. That's the other, you don't deserve it. One of my favorite lines from very little stories from one of the best pastors ever, Charles Spurgeon. He was referring to Malachi 1, where God says, I've loved Jacob, but Esau I've hated. So God said, I loved Jacob, but I hated Esau. What? That's crazy. I hated Esau. So a woman went up to Charles Spurgeon, and the woman said, I can't understand. I cannot understand why God would say that he hated Esau. And Charles Spurgeon replied, oh, that's not difficult, madam. My trouble is to understand how God could love Jacob. But it's such a great story about how we're wired and what we expect of God. Like, oh, God, love me, love me, love me. I can understand how you could love me. I mean, I am pretty awesome. I am great in pretty much every way. So of course God loves me. You're like, oh no, you're missing it. God loves you in spite of you, in spite of your sin, which is amazing. That makes that love all the more incredible. Very different than the twisting of the gospel, which is very popular today, which says, God loves you and your sin. No. That gives people the excuse to just keep sinning. God loves me and everything I am and everything I do. And again, what's not to love, really? No. When people don't understand the depth and depravity of their sin, they don't fully understand how much God really loves you. Because he loves you in spite of it. And if you don't understand that, then you're not going to submit to him. And if you're not going to submit to him and put him at the center of your life and the center of your story, then you're going to put you at the center of your story. And of course, you're going to be bitter, angry, envious, resentful, and all these other things. And then we build up all these academic disciplines around this bitter enviness, anger, and resentment. And then again, one of these days, we're going to have to review these 60s French intellectuals and philosophers who were horrible, wretched, terrible, traumatized, horrific, depraved, disgusting, perverted people. They were the worst people ever. And these are the people who came up with these new ideas to explain their pain and to try and make sense of the world. And of course, they weren't going to put God at the center of their life, so they had to come up with some other perverted philosophy. And they did, and academia has embraced it, and pop culture has spread it, and now we're all swimming in it. And we wonder why everything's screwed up. So you want to end the grievance world that we live in today? Get over yourself. Stop putting yourself at the center of your story. It's one of the most, I got to go here because we got great guests, but it's one of the most liberating realizations you could ever have. How often are you constantly worried about what other people think about you? Right? I feel like you're always thinking about what other people think about you. And the truth is, no one's ever thinking about you. No one thinks about you. They can't think about you because they're busy thinking about themselves. Just like you are. You're thinking about yourself. You're only thinking about yourself because you're the center of your story, and this other person, they're the center of their story. But we act like because we're the center of our universe that we're also the center of everybody else's universe. So if we're the center of everybody else's universe, then of course they're thinking about me because I'm the center of their universe. But you're not the center of the universe. They're the center of their universe. No one's thinking about you. You're thinking about you all the time, constantly, nonstop. And when you're worried about what other people are thinking about you, you're really just thinking about yourself still. You could be in a meeting, right? Let's say you're in a meeting, your Zoom meeting or whatever, and you say something that, wasn't well articulate, articulated or whatever. And the rest of the day, you're worried about what other people think about what you said in the meeting that morning. No one cares. No one's thinking about you. You are not a blip on anyone's radar because they're only thinking about themselves, just like you are. I'll prove it. How often are you thinking about other people? You're not. And they're not thinking about you either. It's the old Bette Midler line. You know me, I love to quote Bette Midler. She said, enough about me, let's talk about you. What do you think of me? There's a good rule of thumb to bring it back to this woke stuff. When you feel judged, it's not other people who are judging you. It's you. It's you judging yourself. So when you have all these woke people saying, oh, you know, white people think I'm this, white people think I'm that, blah, blah, blah. No one's thinking about you. You think those things. You think those things about yourself. Don't blame me for that. You're telling yourself these lies. Or there may be truth to them. But I'll tell you the real true story. I'm not oppressing you. You're oppressing you. Coming up next, the great Steve Krakauer from Fourth Watch. I can't wait to get his perspective on the media. He's so brilliant when it comes to how we should be watching the media. We'll talk about that next. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, there is a newsletter that is associated with us here at The First. And let me tell you, I was skeptical. I don't know why I had a bad attitude, but I started reading it, and it is wonderful. It is perfect, and I read every one that comes out. Steve Krakauer is the man behind Fourth Watch. Steve, how are you, brother? I couldn't hear you, but I'm sure you said thanks for having me. That's if I could lip read. That's I think what I heard. I heard the end of what you said there. How are you, brother?
Okay, I'm
there
good.
You
I'm
go.
good.
Now
Thanks
we're
so much
good.
for having me.
I'm so grateful for what you do. I want to talk about some of the specific headlines and some things you've been talking about, just to give people a flavor of what you do. But before we even do that, what's your approach to watching the media, and therefore, what's your advice to how we should be watching the media?
Yeah, really what I try to do with Fourth Watch is I approach it from a position of look, I love the media. I want it to be better. I don't hate the media. I was part of the media. I was part of CNN. I was part of the Blaze before, and Fox and NBC. I like the media. I think it provides a real value, but it has been not great and getting a little bit worse. And I think during the Trump era, we saw some of the worst of the media. So I try to approach it from someone who has been in those newsrooms, who I worked at CNN for 3 years and as an executive there. What is the thought process going into it, and how can we get it better? I'm very happy to have a base of subscribers and readers who work in New York and DC newsrooms, but a much larger array of people who are outside of it. And I can try to bring a little bit of what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, and you can sign up thefirsttv.com/fourthwatch, spell it Fourth Watch. What do you think, and we'll talk a little human nature here, what do you think drives, let me ask this first, what goes on behind the scenes in the media that people need to be aware of? And I mean that more like the people in the process, because when we watch, whatever, Fox News or MSNBC or whatever, we see the face, we see the anchor. But what goes on behind the scenes, the producers, the corporate, the whatever, that plays a role in the finished product that we see, for better or worse?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of people that are behind the scenes, the executives and the people that direct how the coverage goes. And, you could take cable news as one example, CNN and others, or you can look at places like the New York Times and the Washington Post. And I think one of the most important things to understand about the media is that, by and large, the media, you can go, and I've done this before, you can go in New York City in the span of approximately 1 hour and walk to the headquarters of CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. You can go to all those places in just about 10, 15 blocks. It's incredible, the geographic, I would say, bias, but certainly the geographic location of where these entities come from. And that really informs so much of their coverage and so many of the blind spots they have that just don't understand so much of the country.
That's such a good point. Just geographic bias in and of itself. That's such a good point. And just about the corporate stuff, was it Elon last night, Elon Musk? Washington Post kept asking him for comments, and he wrote back, only give my regards to your puppet master.
Yeah.
So speaking of Bezos, how much of like the top affects what we see end product?
So I think Bezos is a great example, right? I think that generally, from my understanding, he's been pretty hands-off in terms of the editorial product of the Washington Post. That said, there is no, every time that one of these media entities gets gobbled up by another billionaire or some other large conglomerate and merges with another one, there are inevitable conflicts of interest that arise. I mean, how is the Washington Post going to fairly cover Amazon? That's certainly a very fair question to understand, but it goes so much more beyond that. I mean, you look at places like, just throwing it out there, a BuzzFeed or a Vice, which has money invested in those entities from places like an NBC or places like a Disney, has had previous relationships with them. Look at something like a CNN. CNN is owned by AT&T. AT&T obviously is an entity that has cable providers. It has phones. I mean, there's so much intertwined, and this has gotten so much worse, even just in the last 5 to 8 years. The amount of consolidation that's happening in the media has made it so that the independents are really on the outside looking in.
And on that point, so you and I were in this media world, and anyone watching this right now, I mean, you're choosing to watch The First, which is a political-oriented network, right? But a friend of mine was able to get her daughter, who is not politically involved, to watch one of our shows. And we did a show on media bias, and it blew her mind. Just examples of it, because she's not in the political world, but obviously goes on Facebook and Instagram and sees politics, at least that one-sided presentation of it. I say all that, how would you describe media bias to someone who is not a constant consumer of news like we are? Maybe you give like one example that you think is really telling, or how do you describe the depth of it to the average person?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most undercovered aspects of media bias, I would say, is a bias of omission. There is a bias in what gets covered, and what does CNN cover, and how does it cover it, and what does the New York Times do? But even more important, and even more sort of below the surface, is what do they choose not to cover? What do they not even mention? And one of the things that's happened, really, when I was at CNN, I was there from 2010 to 2013. The shows at the network, you had Anderson Cooper, you had Piers Morgan, you had Aaron Burnett. They all sort of operated in their own entities. They had their own interests. One of the things that's changed over time, and this could be a positive or negative, is there's been a flattening. You could watch CNN in any hour and more or less get the same stories that they think are the most important of that day. Inevitably, there are only going to be a few stories. So what doesn't get covered? What doesn't get mentioned at all on that network? What doesn't get mentioned at all in any of the New York Times' tweets or podcasts or video or articles? That is so important, and there's so much that doesn't get covered. That and understanding why that happens is really a key to understanding media bias.
Yeah, which is, again, one of our goals here is to cover those things that are not often covered, and of course from an angle and depth that hopefully that I don't think gets covered either. To pat myself on the back, Steve. Let's talk about some stuff that you get that people get from your newsletter. How is Biden's response to COVID being framed by the media?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're only a month, 5 weeks into the Biden administration, but one of the things that's really starting to emerge is we're left to Trump era that, obviously I think everyone who's watching this knows the way that the mainstream corporate establishment media covered Donald Trump. Yes, there was going to be a pendulum swing the other direction. But what we're starting to see is these very clear mixed messages that are coming out, particularly when it comes to COVID from the Biden administration. Joe Biden himself, the press secretary, Dr. Fauci. We're hearing different things when it comes to schools, when it comes to lockdown, when it comes to vaccines. And the media is I think, in a bit of a bind. There's this inflection point right now. Do they cover the reality of these mixed messages? The idea that we're hearing one thing, they're setting goals that are so ridiculously low that obviously they're going to accomplish them. But how do you even call them goals? You have to start calling out this administration for what they're telling the public, which is really unclear. So yeah, I think the media has a responsibility here, particularly with such a serious issue with COVID, to start to really dig in and say what is the clear messaging that's coming out from this administration, because right now it's all over the place.
Why would the media do that, though? Why would these people who run the media, why would they cover Biden fair ever, really?
Yeah, look, I think that there are people in the media, really at all the organizations, and I will say, not the organization as a whole, but certain people at certain organizations that want to get the story right and really do feel. I mean, the role of a journalist, it's not the same as a job as an accountant or a plumber. I mean, you do have a real responsibility to the public. You are supposed to be the conduit to the public and the check on power, and those that really embrace that role have to understand that it's particularly with COVID, it's a story that for a year now has really driven fear among everyone, all Americans, and they need real information and real facts. That, as of right now, it's going to be a lot harder for them because they were very happy to call out the Trump administration. If you're going to be calling out the Biden administration, if you're going to be demanding answers and really asking tough questions, that is what the public needs.
I guess we're kind of seeing it, right? Like Slate wrote an article and you linked to it. Why do Democrats pretend Andrew Cuomo did a good job with COVID? So we're starting to see some pushback, but I just don't see them. They're never going to treat any of these Democrats like they did Trump, right? Is that fair?
Not the same. No, for sure not the same. But yes, we are starting to see some of it. And I think, look, one of the Biden administration, if they are not giving the truth to the journalists eventually will, just from pure, it will hurt them to be, spun this way. Hopefully they react to that in a way that's going to help the public.
Yep, and I'm grateful you're here to keep everyone accountable as well. How do you prefer people sign up for Fourth Watch?
Yeah, you can go right to that link that you mentioned, thefirsttv.com/fourthwatch or fourthwatch.media. All of those get you to sign up. It's free 3 times a week, and really appreciate what you said about it, Mike.
No, it's really wonderful. Every 3 days or every 3 times a week, I watch it, I read it. It's the first thing I read, and it's wonderful. Really grateful for you. Steve Krakauer. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.
I'm being serious. There's like 10 newsletters I sign up to, and that's the only news-related one that I sign up to, and it covers everything you need in an incredibly fair and decent way, measured, great perspective. It's really, really good. So firsttv.com/fourthwatch. Coming up next, we'll talk about Biden's stimulus plan and what a disaster this thing's going to be. True story, Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So we got the stimulus package, a new stimulus package. I've lost track of how many we've even passed, and who knows what insanity is going to be in this madness. Diana Furchgoth-Roth is here. She is currently adjunct economics professor at George Washington University, former chief economist at the Department of Labor, and chief of staff at the Council of Economic Advisors under George W. Bush. Miss Furchgoth-Roth, am I pronouncing your name correctly, ma'am?
You are, yes. Yes, you are.
Wonderful. It's wonderful to see you. Thanks for being here. Again, to get my perspective right, what number stimulus package is this, and what number are we at?
Well, this is number...
in trillions.
Yeah, well, this is right. Well, this is number 3. This would be 1.9 trillion. This would follow 2 packages that we've had before, 2 trillion last year, and 900 billion just in December. So we might want to ask, have we spent everything from the previous stimulus packages, to which the answer is no, and what can we do more to help people in need, these hotel workers, these restaurant workers who do not have jobs, who cannot go to work, the kids who are home from school. And of course, if the kids are home from school, then the parents also cannot work. So we need to help all these people. But the question is, do we need to spend this much right after we have spent so much already?
Great point. What is your assessment? Let's talk about the bad first, and then we'll get to what should be happening. So what's your assessment on how the first, 3 or 4 trillion was spent?
Well, we have done a lot. We had Operation Warp Speed to get the vaccine out. We purchased doses of vaccine before the vaccine was approved so that we would be ready to go. I think it's remarkable that a year after the pandemic was discovered, we have already vaccinated 60 million people. So that was one really good thing about the stimulus package. We also helped people who were unemployed. We gave them funds to carry over. Because of this, the economy has really boomed and not suffered as much as other economies around the world. Our citizens are getting vaccinated before citizens of Europe. So I think we can congratulate ourselves on what we have done.
So that's interesting, actually. So when I think these stimulus packages in the past, I just assumed that most of this money went directly to people. But you're saying some of this money was spent on vaccines or spent on other things as well. So what percentage went to people?
Exactly. Well, I don't have the exact percentage, but there was funds for unemployment insurance payments, funds for children, and then the funds for stimulus payments where people got checks in the mail. Mm-hmm. And those did help people in need. We need to be focusing on helping people in need. Now, for example,
excuse me, go ahead, please.
Yeah, the new stimulus bill won't necessarily do that. In fact, with the $15 minimum wage, there are people who would be unemployed, as the Congressional Budget Office says. 1.4 million people would lose their jobs. And this is something that is not going to help anybody. It's really not going to help anyone to have an additional 1.4 million unemployed.
No, I think it's irresponsible to shove the $15 minimum wage in the stimulus package. It should be a different deal and a different conversation. And you and I agree that it's not a good idea anyway. But to throw it in here, I think is irresponsible. But I'm seeing a lot of other stuff here. $270 million in arts and humanities endowments, $200 million for museums and libraries, $50 million in family planning funding. That reads abortion to me. $112 million for the San Francisco rapid transit funding. What's the justification for this and for all this pork?
Well, the justification is that these politicians, once they see what they call a vehicle moving, they want to throw their favorite things on it. And that's why some of these things are there. There's also $500 million for cross-country Amtrak, for example, where if we just wanted to help the normal person who needs help, they're not going to want to take an Amtrak train from Washington, D.C. to Chicago. They're probably going to jump on a plane or drive or take a bus. So there's a lot there that politicians just put in to grease the skids because they see these things coming down the road and they think, hey, this is an opportunity to get this in. But we need to be focusing on helping people who need help, getting the kids back to school, getting these hotel and restaurant workers and other workers back to work.
If Diana Furch-Roth was in charge, what would your stimulus package look like exactly?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm not in charge, but the first thing I would do would be to see what was unspent from the previous bill. There was $3 trillion that we've spent already. What is unspent? And I would focus on making good use of those funds, figuring out the people who need help, trying to get assistance to them.
Would you give direct payments to individual people, or would you give it to businesses for them to give to people?
So I would give potentially direct payments to individuals, but I would be more narrowly targeted at a lower income group. I wouldn't have it up to $150,000 a year necessarily. I would focus on industries that need help and also individuals that need help that are not being helped already through existing mechanisms. We have a lot of existing mechanisms already. And some of the things that we're doing,
there's this number, the $2,000 was thrown around, $2,000 checks, and now Biden's kind of backtracking and saying, oh, well, we already gave $600, so now we're only going to give $1,400, so that equals $2,000, and people are upset. Where did this $2,000 number come from? Is that a magic number, or do you have any other number that you think would be more sufficient? How do you even measure that?
So I think going up to the election, the two different parties were trying to see who could outdo each other most in terms of spending in order to make people like them and get votes. And so the view is that the $2,000 isn't coming out of anywhere. It's not coming out of future spending. It's not coming out of borrowing. And a lot of people just see the debt as something so big they don't even worry about it. But it is something that we are going to have to pay off at some point. And we need to be careful of our financial picture, just as households need to be careful about their financial picture. And we don't just go on maxing out on our credit cards if we know that we can't pay it back. So yes, some people, right, exactly.
Yeah,
so some people do need help.
This is my last question, Diana, for you on that point. I'm extremely worried about inflation coming out of this and the real economic ramifications. I'm not even going to ask, will inflation happen? It must. So when?
Right.
When will we really feel the effects of all this spending?
Well, the bond markets share your view, and they were worried about inflation too, and interest rates started rising. We can see in commodity prices, producer price indices, they're starting to rise. No one knows precisely when it's going to be, but with this magnitude of spending, it's going to be, markets are telling us it's going to be in the next 2 or 3 years.
And it's so big, and people have been warning about inflation for so long and blah, blah. But it's got to be bad when it hits, right? And I don't want you to, we don't need to be in the fear-mongering game, but let's just be realistic. It's going to be bad.
Well, it used to be that the Federal Reserve's job was to keep inflation down and keep a stable level of prices. And now the Fed is talking about its goal to be keeping people employed, which is completely different from what their mandate used to be. This gives them the excuse to keep interest rates low basically forever, because there's always more people who can use jobs, and they need to go back to their original mandate of having a stable price level. And when they see inflation rising, they should be doing something about it.
Diana Furchtgoth-Roth, thank you, ma'am. Let's talk again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, all good stuff to know. MikeSlater.locals.com. Please join us over there. And again, I did my church's sermon this Sunday, so you can check that out as well. MikeSlater.locals.com. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word.